Hello, this is Cherisse LaSalle, an associate trainer for Art2Ride, and this is my 10-year-old off-track thoroughbred Charlie. I've been training Charlie according to Art2Ride for about 2 years now. He was diagnosed with kissing spines partway through our journey together, and we've made a lot of progress. These days he feels really good, and I'm able to ride him more and more. This video was filmed in April of 2018, and on this particular day we were working on several things, but probably the main thing we were working on is him responding to my directions as far as my weight aids, my seat aids, my rein aids, and my leg aids, trying to tell him where I want him to be and where I want him to move, and looking for an appropriate response from him. Charlie is still a green horse under saddle, and he does not always respond correctly to the rein aids, the leg aids, the seat aids, all of the above. So you'll see in this video that I'm doing a lot of exaggerated aids, and that is because when you're teaching a green horse, oftentimes they will not respond to the light aid, so you need to then follow it up with a more exaggerated aid to get a response from them. So as you can see right there, as I was going down the long side, I was swaying my hips quite a bit, and the reason I was doing that was because I was actually bumping him with alternate legs. That is the cue to ask the horse to increase their speed when in the walk. And along this side, I was asking for a shoulder in, which he starts to think we're going to make a circle. So I'm actually asking him to keep going straight. I should have been looking straight. I was actually looking at his head. I should have been looking where I wanted to go, and that probably would have helped him a little bit. So with Charlie, it's a bit of a challenge, a bit of an added challenge that he doesn't really know how to be ridden all that well. And so I take a lot of time explaining things to him and breaking things down for him and trying to slow down my body, because I've been riding for so many years that I tend to automatically do things with my body and I don't even realize it. So as I'm learning how to train horses under saddle, I've had to work on my own mindset of really breaking things down and really controlling all of my body to make sure that I'm not asking for things unless I'm consciously thinking that I want to ask for it. Because the problem with this, if you're riding a green horse, you may be asking with your seat for the horse to turn, but the horse doesn't know the seat aids very well, if at all, yet for turning, so they ignore it. Then you wonder why you're not turning. So I start with the lightest aids. I start with my seat aids and looking in the direction that I want to go, and then I follow up with rein aids, leg aids, and ultimately doing whatever I need to do to get the point across of what I'm, like right here is kind of a good example. I wanted to turn him in a circle, and he's drifting away because he thinks that he's supposed to move laterally here. I think I saw we weren't going to make that turn very well, so I decided to change him to the other direction. One thing I noticed about this video is that we start off at a nice active walk, and gradually as we go along, he gets slower and slower. And this is because he's a little unsure where he's supposed to go. And he doesn't want to make a mistake, so he kind of slows down and gets tentative. And I'm trying to help him learn to trust me enough that he can keep going and not slow down quite so much and not question everything quite so much. He really tries hard, and he just doesn't, a lot of times he just doesn't know what he's supposed to be doing or how he's supposed to be doing it just yet. So it requires a lot of patience on my part, and it requires a lot of brain power on my part to think of how can I explain this to him more clearly, how can I show him what I'm asking without getting too aggressive with my aids, because I'm very against the idea of force in training horses. I don't think we should force anything. I think everything should be, asking to various degrees, and you might start off asking really gently, will you please move sideways? And the horse ignores you. So then you escalate that to move sideways. And then if they still ignore you, you've got to escalate it to, I need you to move sideways now. And how you go about doing that is a little bit of an art, in knowing just how loud to get with your aids and knowing the timing of everything. It's definitely not a simple thing. So I take my time and I allow myself time to think through how I'm riding, what I'm doing, time to feel what's happening with his body, and trying to feel his back, trying to notice when it's lifting up and when it's dropping down. Trying to keep my position good and trying to keep myself in balance. So you'll notice that I spend a lot of time in walk with him and a lot of time doing pretty much nothing. And that is for a very good reason. That is because I need to teach him when I don't want anything from him. And I need to reinforce in myself to not always be asking for things. Because like I said, I've ridden for so many years that I've gotten a lot of habits. I've gotten used to asking for things automatically, which is a good thing in one sense, but at the same time, if you're going to train horses, it's not really a good thing because you have to be able to be in complete control of your entire body, and you have to know when you're asking for something and when you're not, and you have to be able to turn on and off your aids completely. And when you get into these really fine aids and slight changes of weight mean things to the horse, but if it's a green horse, they don't mean anything. And if you're doing them and the horse is not responding, you're basically teaching the horse that those little tiny aids, which you want later to mean something, you're teaching the horse that they don't mean anything. So you have to be very careful that you really completely turn off your aids when you don't want anything. So I give Charlie a lot of breaks during my rides now with him. I ask for something and then I leave him alone. I ask for something else and then I leave him alone. So you'll see a lot of time in this video where we're just walking along. We're not really, there's no real goal aside from that he's walking along. And ideally, he would be lifting his back more. Ideally, he would be stretching down more. But I have to give him those moments where I leave him alone in order for him to better understand when I'm actually asking for something. So right here, he's starting to move a little better. He's lifting his back and stretching down. He's starting to take a little deeper step under his body. Ooh, that's very nice. Okay. And then he lost it again, and now he's getting it back. So at this stage in his ridden work, our goal is to get him closer under saddle to how he is when I lunge him. And it's more difficult because now I'm on his back, which adds weight, but more importantly, it adds another creature's balance into the equation. So as the horse stretches down, my balance is affected and his balance is affected in return. So it's very, very important to maintain my balance at all times so that I don't affect him negatively and make his work even harder. Well, it's much easier said than done. So here we're practicing our circles, and that's one thing that we've really struggled with. He tends to think that when I ask for a circle that I actually want lateral, like a leg yield. And I understand that a circle, you know, it kind of is a leg yield on a curve, but what happens is he drifts out and he gets really confused. So that's one thing I'm trying to help him understand, is what's the difference between when I want a circle versus a leg yield, and also the difference between those two and a shoulder in, because they're all very similar but just a little bit different in how we ask for them. So I think as I'm watching myself ride here, I look a little stiff. I'd like to see my back not be quite so stiff, and my arms not be quite so stiff. One thing I have noticed is that I've put a lot of focus on leaning back, like to keep my shoulders back and my chest up, which is good, but unfortunately, thinking about that has caused me to get stiff in my back and actually lose my balance because my legs come out from underneath me. So I've since realized that I need to get my legs, keep my legs a little more underneath me and not try to lean back quite so much. And this is something, it's a little bit difficult for me because I did a lot of jumping for a long time, and so my position was very much like a hunter's position. I always was leaning a little bit forward, and when I started learning dressage, my instructors had helped me to lift my chest and keep my shoulders back and not sit with any kind of incline in my upper body. But I think I've corrected that well enough by now, and I'm still trying to correct it, and I think the result is I'm like overcorrecting it. So I need to not be leaning back quite so much. And there, just a moment ago, Charlie had a little moment where he saw something that made him a little uptight. So I'm just trying to get his attention back by doing a little bit of circling. He's still trying to look over at whatever it was that he heard. So I'm circling him to get his attention back. And right here, he wasn't responding to my outside aids. He just kept drifting down until he finally got to the end there where he had to turn. But that's very typical of what happens a lot of times when I'm asking for him to turn. He will ignore my aids and just kind of drift out. So that's something we're working on a lot these days. And this video clip is about to end, but I will have part 2 up on YouTube very shortly. So if you want to see part 2, you can take a look at that. Thanks for watching.